Ooh. Welcome back to the channel, kids. Oh, another day, another PC build. Well, this is something a little bit different. We like our gaming PCs here on the Concept Soup channel, of course, everybody knows this, but my business, we also make some nice office productivity PCs, and I've been looking for an excuse to use this teeny tiny case, and we'll be taking a look at a sweet little build in the Inwin B1 ITX chassis. This is the smallest PC I've ever put together, and it was fun, and it was actually really easy. Let's take a look at this beautiful case. Coming right up on Concept Soup. Thank you very much for watching. So, here's the case. Yeah, looks like a pretty funky little unit, very unique. You know, you might like it, you might hate it, but let's take a look at what's inside. So we're going to start by actually taking off the side here, which has the feet on it, just so that we can see what's in the bottom, what's in the top, and the kind of design they've gone for. Because whenever you do a case of this size, you've got to design it quite well so that it's quite compact, but can still house quite a lot of stuff. So let's pop off the back of that, and we can see this is where you're going to be storing your 2.5-inch storage drives. So you've actually got room for two 2.5-inch drives, which means that you can actually have a stupid amount of storage in this tiny unit. Because of course that could accept a 2.5-inch hard drive or a 2.5-inch SSD, and you can get those in monstrous sizes these days. So that's pretty sweet. So moving on now, next up we are going to be just cracking the chassis off as a whole and taking a look at what's inside. So when you take the top off, you just take it off from a couple of screws from the inside, and you can see there's actually a power supply already installed. So that's a 200 watt 80 plus gold power supply. The reason is because it's such a tiny case, they have to have a proprietary power supply. There's just no way you'd get any other kind of standardized power supply in there. So we're looking in there, taking a look at what's there, and actually notice that those 2.5-inch bays as well, they're already pre-wired with like an adapter, so all you have to do is just slide your storage device in, and you're away, which is just absolutely genius. That is actually such a good idea. So you've got all the connections you need there with no extra fluff, so that you can make the best out of the space that you've got in there, because it is teeny tiny. So now we're taking a look at the motherboard, getting this all set up first. So the motherboard we're using today is H510M ITX AC, and we're going to be pairing that with an Intel i7-10700, so you've got the built-in graphics obviously, and actually a really good price as well. We're also going to be using some PNY RAM, the Accelerate stuff, because it's really cheap. It's like 115 quid for 32 gigs, DDR4 3200. Obviously, you don't want to spend loads of money on fast RAM on an H series motherboard. It's probably no point. So yeah, and that's going to be nice. And then for our SSD, we have a terabyte. I think it's either a Crucial or a WD. We'll see somewhere in the video anyway. So yeah, basically it's an NVMe SSD, which means it's going to be really nice and snappy. And really, apart from that, you don't need much else. Just need a cooler for the CPU. So we've got the Noctua NHL9i, which is one of the drawbacks to this case is that you can only use really low-profile coolers. So it's going to be interesting to see how that handles the i7. But as the i7 isn't a K part, it should be locked at 65 watts, which should just be all right for that NHL9i to handle. So we'll show you a few little bits from the build, and then at the end we'll talk about the build process, how everything went, and the final result. So as you can see here, we're getting the I/O shield in, ready to install the motherboard. I didn't actually mention there is a really teeny tiny fan on the top of the case for an exhaust fan to try and get some heat out, which doesn't really work very well, but it's better than having nothing there, and you couldn't fit a standard fan on there anyway, so it's better than nothing. So sliding our motherboard in, it is a tight squeeze, but actually really easy installation. One of the easiest ITX cases ever, really. There's not really much fiddling around. You just slot it in, screw it down, and you're away. The only thing that might trip you up is the cable management a little bit, so there's not really any way to make this look super neat just because there's not enough room. But you're able to plug everything in just fine. Just make sure you separate all the cables so that you're not having cables cross over each other, because they are designed with just the right amount of length to get to where they need to be. The front panel audio connector, that's a little bit tricky, so that's actually, it's just a little, if you just need to make it like a centimetre longer, just so that it was, you had a bit more slack to get it into the actual socket. But hey ho, that's how it goes. We managed to get it in anyway, so it's absolutely fine. And at this point now, we've got everything neatly cable managed, as neat as you can make it, and we're just going to pop that top shell back on. And of course, that top shell, you just secure it with a couple of screws next to where the I/O shield is. It's really nice, so you don't have any screws visible on the unit at all, because they're all sort of tucked away. It's just a really good, clean looking design. I really like it. So let's take a look at some B-roll, and then we'll come back with a conclusion about the case and what we thought. Got a little confession to make. I lost the B-roll footage for this case. That's not good. But I do have some photos, so that's still going to let me illustrate the point. I really wish I didn't lose that goddamn B-roll footage. I must have deleted it for some reason. We have got some photos. So basically, let's just talk about what we always talk about with case reviews. So it's going to be form and function. So whenever you buy a case like this, which is tiny, you're buying it for its form factor, aren't you? So you're buying it because it's tiny. I think actually these photos would be quite handy, because I've got it with a measuring tape next to it showing you exactly how long it actually is on a desk. And yeah, it's compact. Like I don't know how you could possibly make a computer smaller than this. Like, you put the board in and there's only a couple of inches either side of it that makes up the case. So unless you're just going to slap the motherboard straight on your desk and use it, there's no way you're going to get a smaller computer than this, unless you get one of those proprietary sort of system integrator ones like HP, Dell, whatever. They sometimes make specialized, even smaller ones. But for a consumer, this is really about the smallest you're going to get, which is really great. If you've got one of those small desks, one of those old school 20 quid desks from Argos, this is going to be a really, really good computer for you, because it just uses up basically no space on the desk. You can either lie it on its back so it's flat, or you can use the included plastic stand just to stand it up tall, and it just uses up basically no room. And I think it actually looks really cool. And if you were so inclined, if you wanted to maybe put some RGB RAM in there, that might give it a little bit of a bit of extra pizzazz, if you like. So that, that's always an option as well. But it's not really for gamers, obviously, unless within the next few weeks there's egg on my face and somebody releases a really nice APU. You're not really going to be doing any gaming on this, and I did test a bit of gaming on it actually. It didn't do very well at all. I just loaded up Fortnite. I was just curious to see what it would do in Fortnite at 1080p, and it was like 15 frames per second on the integrated graphics. So yeah, not for gaming. If you drop it down to 720p, you can just about get 60 frames per second. So if you're really in a pinch, you could do that. If you're playing old games like Age of Empires or something like that, yeah, you'll be able to play that on this as well. So if you just want a bit of light sort of RTS gaming, that's fine. But we were talking about the form, weren't we, and how it looks. So nice sort of acrylic front panel. Normally I'd knock acrylic and say give me glass instead, but for this kind of thing, it's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. It might even be glass, and I might just be completely stupid. The exterior has this kind of I want to say corrugated. It's not corrugated. It's just lots of sort of plastic lines with grooves in it. It's kind of, I don't know, it reminds me of like an aircraft hangar. So I don't know. I'm making it up. I'm just trying to describe something, but you can see the design that they've gone for, and I think it's unique. It looks really cool. It doesn't really lend itself very well to ventilation. So what I would have liked to have seen is them actually use that design to help with ventilation. So what they could have done is actually open up some of those side channels to use as air exhaust, because one of the problems you get with this case, which we'll come on to later, is the heat builds up and it's just got very little room to escape from the case. But hey, we'll talk about that in a moment, won't we? So overall, looks really nice, and it's got, you know, a couple of ways you can configure it. And those feet on the back, if you do tend to put it up, sort of stand it upright, you can actually take those little silver feet off the back yourself, so you don't have to have those there all the time. Overall, I think the look is awesome, and that's pretty much why you're buying this case, isn't it? For the small form factor and the look. But functionality always has to come into it. So when we talk about functionality, I like to try and keep it simple to start with. So we'll be talking about what can you fit in here. Right, ITX board fits easy. RAM with tall heat spreaders, like that Oloy RAM, the Warhawk, that kind of stuff, that's not going to fit in here. Well, it might, but it's going to be a squeeze, so I wouldn't go for it. Just low profile or semi-low profile RAM is going to be absolutely fine. CPU coolers, this is going to be a real challenge, and I don't think there's anything much more than that Noctua NH-L9i that's going to fit in here, just because there's just not enough clearance for it. Because if you get a bigger CPU cooler, the RAM's in the way, so you're just not going to make it work. So even one of those low-profile 120mm CPU coolers, they're just not going to fit in here. So don't go for any elaborate cooling in here either. In terms of what else you can fit, obviously don't fit a graphics card in it, but that's not the point of this, is it? But I was really impressed that you could get 2.5-inch drives in this as well. I think that's really good design. They've really made really good, efficient use of the space in this machine. And I like the fact that the power supply they included is perfectly adequate for the kind of system you're going to be using in here. 200 watts is plenty. Even if you had a super cranked 10850K in here, don't do that. But if you were going to, you'd just about get away with it as well, because whilst you can get a 10850K to go 250 watts to blow this power supply, it's probably not going to happen. So for the kind of systems you're going to be running, perfect. 200 watt and gold rated as well, so it's good for your electricity bills. Yeah, nice, very nice. It's perfectly suited to what it's for, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Who is this PC case for? It's probably not for the people watching this video, let's be honest. It's not for people that want to play games. Well, at least not yet. Once they bring out, you know, a blazing hot, you know, APU, we'll be fine. But for now, this is an office box. It really is. And maybe because of, you know, Intel having the quick sync, maybe you could do a bit of professional work on this as well. If you're on a bit of a budget and you just need a tiny machine that you can chuck in your backpack and take with you, then, you know, it's not a bad option either. But I think this case is perfect for office users. If I had office PCs, I'd want this case lined up all the way across, just because you can spend less money on the desk and it's low maintenance and everything works really nicely. The downside is the temperatures, isn't it? So you're not going to have really good temperatures on this. You're just not, because you're limited with your CPU cooler and you've only got that tiny little fan. I don't even know if it's a 90mm fan. It might even be an 80mm fan on the top, pushing it out of the case. It's just not quite enough to actually keep this cool. So I found that during the temperature tests that I was doing, I've run Prime 95 for about 30 minutes or so, and it was hitting about 95 degrees C, which in itself isn't a bad result. But the problem was when I stopped the test, and I just had an inkling about this, I left the monitoring software on for another half an hour and it had only gone down to about 85 degrees. So that heat dissipation time is really long in this case. So if you're going to be doing lots of stressful work, this isn't the case for you. But like I said earlier, it's an office box, so you shouldn't really be having that problem. Anyway, I think that reaches the end of the review. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. The thing is, this is great office box, but for pretty much anything else, it's not a good buy. But it's a very unique one. So it was a good fun experience to build in such a diddly case. If you liked it, drop a like, drop a comment, especially a comment. I love to see your comments. It's so nice just to have some human interaction, especially on a small channel like this. It is greatly appreciated. So yeah, spread the word far and wide. Inwin B1 office case of the year. See you later.